Hey, what's up guys, it's Rob. Hope you're doing really good out there. So sad news this week in terms of rock music. Taylor Hawkins, the drummer of the Foo Fighters, died a week ago, and it's pretty upsetting news. He's been a part of the Foo Fighters since day one. And the Foo Fighters, I'm not going to sit here and say we're one of my favourite bands or are one of my favourite bands because the band's still going, but I do think they are a really, really good rock band. I saw the Foo Fighters live in 2008 at Wembley here in the UK, and it's probably one of the best gigs I've ever been to, one of the best concerts. But despite them not really being one of my favourite bands, they do have some really, really great rock songs. They are a great rock band and a great live band especially, like I said. And one of my favourite songs by the Foo Fighters is Times Like These. Not just because it's a great song to listen to, but there's so much musically going on in that song which really grabs me not only as a guitar player but a musician. It really piques my interest, so I thought I would make a video all about Times Like These and what makes that song so cool in my opinion. So let's grab the guitar and take a closer look. So Times Like These is in the key of D, D major, although not strictly D major. It's actually in the key of D mixolydian, which is very similar. The only difference is that one of the notes has changed within the scale which makes up D major. So let me very quickly explain that. D major, if I played the D major scale, all 7 notes would sound like this. That's 7 notes plus the octave the second time we play D. And the notes that we have in that scale are D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D again. D is the octave like I said. And it's this C sharp, this 7th note, which is actually moved down a semitone to C to give it more of a mixolydian sound as opposed to a straightforward major. So D major would sound like this with the C sharp, and D mixolydian sounds like this with the flat 7, which makes it D mixolydian. And that is very evident all the way through Times Like These. It's in a major key, but the flat 7, that C note, is what really stands out. It's pretty much in every section of this song, that C note is highlighted very, very clearly. And this is evident right from the start of the song when we have this really cool intro chord, which is a D dominant 7, add 6, or a D6 dominant 7 chord. And if you're not sure what dominant means, that's usually a major chord, a major triad, or a major arpeggio, which has all the ingredients which make up a major chord, which is usually the first note, the third note, and the 5th note of a scale, which makes up the D major chord, but with the addition of a flattened 7th, in this case, this C note. So if I played a dominant arpeggio in D, it would have a root, a third, a 5th, and that flat 7, and maybe an octave. And like I said, this C note, this flat 7 is really common in the entire song, and it's even in this chord is what makes it sound pretty interesting. So if we have a look at this chord in a little bit more detail, we have a D note on the 5th fret of the A string. So there's our root. Then the next string is the open D. So there's another root note. So we have root, root. Then the next note is the 5th fret on the 3rd string, which is that C note, that dominant note, that flat 7. Then here's where things get interesting, because the next note is the open B string. So we have a flat 7 of C and an open B string. And musically, B and C are right next to each other. And when you play those 2 notes right next to each other at the same time, you kind of get a little bit of a disorientated feel and a little bit of a, a different vibe to what you'd normally expect, which sounds like this. It doesn't sound like it works completely well. It sounds like there's a little bit of a conflict musically. But when you put that in this chord, it sounds really nice, and it gives just a little bit of a different atmosphere to the whole song. And this is the chord that is starting the tune, so it's starting straight away, kind of telling you what key it's in, this major key, but with this really dominant and kind of spacey tone to it, which I really like. Then on the bottom, or the top, we just have an A note, which is the 5th note of the D scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So like I said, we have a root, a flat 7, a 6, but I forgot to mention that that B note is the 6th, that's the add 6 or the D6 part of it. Just a straightforward major 6th note, and then an A note on the bottom, which is the 5th, to give us our intro chord. Combine that with the really cool, and in my opinion, quite iconic strumming pattern that comes along with that. kind of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. So already quite a lot going on in this song, and we've only just talked about the very first intro chord. By the way, on the intro chord, I think it even changes between the open A string and the D note fretted at the 5th fret in the middle of the chord to kind of do this. It's pretty tricky to do that without hitting the low E string. You get the same effect without doing that, but it sounds cool with it as well. And that's just a little transition to add a little bit of movement in there. Really cool chord, really cool intro. So next we kick into the song, and here's where things start to get really interesting and a lot more musically cool in my opinion. So we have a 3-chord progression which goes straight to the D major, and then what sounds like a C add 9 next. So again, we've got a C chord instead of C sharp. We've got a flat 7 chord in this case. Not C sharp, because that would sound very weird in this context. We've already highlighted that C is the dominant note here, so we've got that in a chord form now. And then we just change the root note of this C to a B. And that's the opening chord sequence. And what's strange about this is that normally chord progressions are 4 chords long. This one is only 3 chords long before it then goes back to the beginning again. So we have an odd number of chords in the progression. Not only that, when it actually kicks in, the song kicks into a time signature change from 4/4 in the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, to this 7/4 feel. So each chord is played for 7 beats before it changes to the next one. So 3 chords, all in 7, which is a little bit like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And in my opinion, it's one of the smoothest time signature changes in any song that I've heard, because normally sometimes going from an even time signature like 4/4 or anything like that to an odd time signature can be a little jarring. I don't think that this time signature change from 4/4 to 7/4 is that noticeable. It's just done so smoothly and it blends really, really well. And it even does that chord progression 3 times, which is just further accenting the whole odd vibe to this tune. But the very, very last chord of this intro section adds an extra beat. So this is the 3rd repeat of the chord progression, and this is what it does. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that 8th note, that 8th hit, is what brings us back into the next section, back into the 4/4 time signature, which I think is super, super cool. And again, it's so smooth, and the transition back from 7/4 to 4/4, it doesn't actually affect you, it doesn't jar you in any sort of way. Really, really, really cool. And over the top of that, we have this really awesome lead guitar part. Which starts on the root note, D, to play an octave root note, D on the 12th fret, and then the next note is this C, and again, the flat 7. So this flat 7, this C note, this mixolydian note, dominant note, is really prevalent in not only the chord that we use in the background, but the actual notes that we use in the main melody as well. And the next notes on the top string is just a G to an F sharp. And it's this 3rd note here, this F sharp, which is the 3rd of a D major chord, which makes it sound nice and happy. So we have this kind of jarring C note, which resolves on a happy 3rd note, which is really cool. Which fits perfectly in the 7/4 timing as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And just like the last chord of that progression where there's 8 beats, the lead guitar also has 8 beats by adding a further A note on the end of it, a little bit like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it ends on this A note before going into the next section. Absolutely nailed it in terms of really cool things happening musically in this tune. So the chord progression in the verse is what I really like next, so let's take a look at that. The reason I like this chord progression so much is just because it's so simple. It's a D to an A minor, to a C, to an E minor, and then back to D. But actually when it goes back to the D, it goes to the D6 dominant 7 chord. And the reason I like this is because this is just very basic. It's simple, it doesn't need to be anything else, but it does add a little bit of colour by arpeggiating through the notes of the chords. So it's a really sort of dynamic shift from quite loud in the intro to kind of soft and quiet in the verse for the singing to shine through. In the A minor chord, something interesting happens. You hear this A minor chord with a G note on the end, which makes an A minor 7 chord. But only for a split second. Really interesting there. So the verse repeats twice, and I think it's such a cool chord progression. So after that, we've only really got the chorus, and then basically the rest of the song is just rinse and repeat of what it's done so far. So the chorus, again like the intro when the song kicks in, is just 3 chords long. We've got C major, E minor, and D. So we're starting, again, on a C major chord. C, again, being the dominant note, the flat 7 in this case. I told you, it's highlighted in literally every part of this song is a C, either a chord or a C note, which is pretty cool in my opinion. So C, E minor, D. And not only does this chord progression, or this chorus part, start on the C musically, the actual main melody, the vocal line, is actually rooted on a C note. When it actually says, times like these. It's times like these. And the cool thing on top of that is the lead guitar, because it kind of has very simple chords in the background, but the lead guitar kind of does this octavey kind of sound. Which is where I'm just playing octave notes. So the first chord, C, has this G octave. And G is the 5th note of the C scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're starting on the 5th of C, and then when it drops to E minor, we drop our octave to E as well. So this time we're highlighting that minor drop there by playing the root note with this octave pattern. But the interesting part is when it goes to the D chord, we skip up to this F sharp octave. And if you remember, like I said earlier, F sharp is the 3rd in the D scale. 1, 2, 3. And that major 3rd is the one that kind of brightens it up and gives that happy sort of upbeat feel to the entire song. So we have a 5th from C, a root on E, and then a major 3rd on D with the octaves. Really interesting choice of notes, which fits perfectly with the vocal lines. So I like the C down to E and then brighten it up with that F sharp on the D. But what's really interesting is that coming out of that section, it goes back to this chord, this D7, well, D dominant 7, add 6, D6 dominant 7 chord. So just when the chord has brightened up, this D in the chorus with this nice accented major 3rd, it's immediately taken away from you, straight back to this kind of washy sort of sound, ready to go into the next verse. So even the chorus of this tune is very musical. And the only other thing I want to mention really is the pace of the song. It doesn't really slow down, it just keeps going with this nice driving pace. Pretty much all the way through, which is really cool because I think that adds to the smoothness of the whole thing, especially when it's changing from a 4/4 to a 7/4 section. The pace of the song doesn't slow down at all, which I think helps it not be so jarring when it switches between the sections. So there you go guys, there's a quick look at one of my favourite songs by the Foo Fighters. In fact, I think I would argue that this is probably one of my favourite songs altogether really. I mean, I have quite a big list of favourite songs, but this is definitely on there. It deserves its place for being not only a good song to listen to, but a really good song musically with a lot of really cool things happening. So I hope you enjoyed this video of me taking a little look at what makes this song so cool. If you did enjoy this video, let me know in the comments what you think. Also, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see me do this for other songs as well, leave them in the comments and I'll check them out. Or maybe I'll just do some other ones of my favourite songs as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. Hope you learned some stuff as well. If you like the video, please subscribe and obviously like the video, click the like button, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video.